Howdy folks, I'm John from Whitewater Vans, and today we're going to be talking about how to remove the headliner above the driver's seating area to put in sound deadening and insulation. We do that because in the summer it gets pretty hot up there, and in the winter it can get cold. So we're going to replace those components up above the headliner in this video. After that, we've got another video on how to install this cool White Top Adventures headliner shelf that comes with a curtain. So stay tuned. We're going to remove the headliner shelf all up here so that we can put sound deadening and insulation up in there, and then we'll put it back up in. So a couple things we have to do that. First of all, we're going to pop these off. So you can see there's these little clips. They pop off pretty easily with I use a thin screwdriver to just wedge up underneath there. And then once the screwdriver's in there, a little trim tool to pop in and just pop them down. And doing it that way, I've never broke any. Not that it matters too much because I'm not putting them back in. Later on, the 1/4 inch thick ceiling will slide up into this gap in between, and I'll screw in between, and that'll sandwich the ceiling up in there. But if you want to reuse them, that's how you get them out. We take off these A-pillar trims. So there's a screw right up here. It says airbag. Whoops. You pop off the little airbag cover, then you remove the screw, and then you can pop the whole thing just forward off of there. There's a couple of clips you can see here. There's a little clip kind of there in the middle and a little one down near the bottom. And so you just kind of work that free, working your hand down, popping it off as you go. You do that on both sides. We've removed the visors, the sun visors on both sides, and I think that's about it. Now we're ready to remove it. There is one more trick here to removing that, and I'm going to need my screwdriver. Okay, so when this comes down, there's a trim piece. Let's try this side where you can see better. Yeah, this trim piece all along here is going to slide down, and it does so that these two metal pieces here are hooks. So what we're going to do is, without touching the threads in there, I'm just going to lift up on that a little bit and lift it forward. So you're kind of lifting it up and off the hook, just like that. And then the whole thing will slide down, and that frees the headliner shelf so that we can slide it out of there. I'll just give a little narration to what's happening here. We're popping off those two hooks on both sides and then sliding down the airbags, which it's kind of a tight piece of trim that fits up over the headliner. So we're just going to pull that down a little bit and let it hang. We're going to do that on both sides. And at this point, the headliner is mostly freed. It's just connected by a hook in the back, which I'm going to pop off of there and then slide it out, slide it towards me about 1 inch. Then there's two clips that need to be unclipped. There could be more depending on your van, but there's a couple of clips that unhook right there, and we're going to slide that headliner right on out. Okay, what we can see here is that there are a couple of clips. This is wired up in, but there's just a blue clip on the back of that guy. And there's this white clip right there. So 2 clips, but otherwise good to go. We are going to put in our materials. Now we're going to install the sound deadening. In this case, I've got Kill Mat. I've also used a Noico on other vans. You simply take the pieces, stick them up in there, and then you take a rolling tool, a little rolling pin tool, and you roll it over the material in 2 directions, which is what I just completed there. Stuck them up and rolled them. Now we're installing the insulation, which is Thinsulate SM600L, and I'm doing 2 layers. So the first layer gets cut and it put with spray adhesive up into the headliner. And the second piece I'm cutting actually goes onto the headliner itself. You'll see that when I bring in the headliner in just a moment. So we glue the first piece. I cut a little gap there around where the rear view would go and some of the electronics so that it's not pushed up tight to the wires, a little bit into the side corners. And we bring in the headliner itself with the thin slate that I've glued onto that as well. We reconnect our two plugs so that the wiring is connected. And then we're going to slip it right back up in where it goes. The sun visor area slips in first. There's a couple of little hooks that tuck in right there. So you'll slide those two hooks in. And then you can move towards the back. And we're just going to secure the very back with one more clip. Once those headliner clips are in place, I'm just double checking them right now to make sure the front's all nice and tight. Then in the back, we're going to tuck in some of that insulation so it's behind the joist, the ceiling joist beam. And we're going to take that last little plastic clip. I'm just using one at this point to pop it in there to hold the back up. And then once I get all the rest of the trim and the airbags replaced, that's going to hold it in place long term. So now I'm working on those airbags, tuck them in. I've got a little trim tool. The headliner is kind of tight to go back into that slot, so the trim tool helps to kind of ease the headliner back into the slot. You slide it up and hook those two hooks. I'm putting in the A-pillar right now. Going to put that in on both sides, pop it in nice and tight, and we'll probably jump in there and take a close-up and see what's going on. All right, see if we can show what's going on in here. So we tuck it down into the bottom there, pop the clip into the middle, and right up here is our screw hole. Couple of screws there, and then we just tuck in this trim. You may not see it, but there's a trim piece right here. So we just tuck in that trim all the way around. And now we just have to do the same thing to the other side. Tuck the headliner up into the airbag slip, put the A-pillar trim back on, screw it into place, and then we're going to replace the visors on both sides. Those have a little bit of a hook that slides up into the top, and then 4 bolts that hold them into place. Now, a lot of this visor is plastic, and if you crank those bolts down too tight, you can snap off a piece of that plastic, and then you're going to be headed over to the Mercedes store for another visor, and they're not cheap. So try not to over tighten those bolts that you're putting in as you go through that plastic visor. Just tight enough, make sure that there's no rattling, nothing's moving around, and the bolts are fully seated, but don't crank them down too terribly hard. Ask me how I know this. Looks like I got a headlamp out so I can see what's going on up in there. Again, just kind of moving carefully and slowly to make sure that everything is seated properly and tightened just so. And that's all, folks. Just like that, we removed the headliner, put in sound deadening, 2 layers of insulation, and reinstalled the headliner. Takes a couple hours, but it'll be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter for the life of the van. I think it's worth it. Let me know in the comments below if insulation and sound deadening is one of the things that you like to add to your van and your headliner, or if you experience hot or cold up there in the front driving area. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.